Congratulations, Barbara, and thank you so much for coming on Pacific Waves
Oh,
to
you
talk
know,
about
I love you
your
guys.
book.
I love you guys. And it was actually my first job. When I worked in the Cook Islands, I was actually working for Radio New Zealand International. So, yeah.
Oh, the feeling's mutual. We love you too. Where did you find the time to write your book on top of balancing your day-to-day job at One News?
Well, that's a really good question. I really didn't. I didn't manage my work-private life very well, and it would turn out that I'd work full-time and then I'd go home, work into the night. I'd work every weekend. I even went on holiday, took my laptop with me, and every so often my poor publisher at our press, Mary Varnum, she'd write to me and she'd send me a text say, I know you're busy. I've seen you on TV in Vanuatu in the earthquake, so I'm assuming I'm not going to get this in time for... So they were pretty patient with me, but it did take about a year in my just part-time writing, yeah.
Where did the idea to write a book come from anyway?
It was more that, we live in such turbulent times at the moment, and I really wanted people to see the Pacific through my eyes, like the joy of it, the challenges, it's tough, the ugly, but also the beautiful. And the Pacific is so important to the world. It's important to New Zealand and Australia. And I thought if I show it, like the real stories behind, and a lot of them, what happens behind the scenes, that it just might provide, share that joy really of the Pacific with people. I'm really concerned about the way the region is going at the moment, and I think there's volatile times ahead. And so I really decided some time ago that I wanted to record it and record, for my family as well. And yeah,
as you say, volatile times ahead in the Pacific. I read the book and I was deeply inspired by it. A few times you have shared in your pages that you became part of the news. Can you talk me through the time when you were detained in Fiji? What goes into the framing of that story?
It's not ideal when a journalist becomes the news. That is not what we aspire to be. I had someone from MFAT say to me, but it made you famous. And I'm like, no, it was unpleasant, and it's not why we do what we do. Yes, that's right. I was covering the coup in Fiji, the military regime, for a couple of years after. So 2006 was the coup. And in 2008, we knew that they were really clamping down on local media. They were censoring. They'd got draconian laws in place. So we knew it was a matter of time before they targeted journalists who go there regularly. And they didn't like me because I go to grassroots and I know Fiji pretty well. And so I knew it was just a matter of time. So when we went in, sure enough, I got detained and put into a detention centre, and it was pretty horrible during the night, where I'd got a call from my friends at Fiji TV, and they'd said, we've heard that, just be prepared. They might come for you tonight, and this is what's been said. And so I got myself ready. And I was anxious because I knew people had been tortured, and women in particular had been targeted. And so I wondered what might happen to me. So I got myself mentally strong, and I started, I acknowledge that it sounds weird and stupid, but, I practiced taking off my clothes, putting them back on, so that if anything came to it, I could look at these guys in the eye and just confront it and be strong. And it did help me as well, that sort of rote thing, putting my inhaler in my pants and things like that, because we'd all heard stories about what was happening to especially the local people who were in opposition to the military regime.
When you came back to New Zealand, what kept you going? Did you ever think to yourself when you came back from Fiji, is this even worth putting my life at risk?
No. In fact, the opposite, because I knew that because I'd been targeted in this way, that means that I'm doing my job. So when you get targeted as a journalist, like I did in Nauru, when I got taken into the police station and detained there, when I got, was in the hostage camp in 2000 for the George Speight coup, you come out stronger, because I always think if I'm being targeted, that means that I'm doing my job, and just because they don't like it and they want to put a stop to it, that's a good thing, I think.
And that's why the book is called Be Brave.
Yeah, well, it's funny because sometimes I don't feel that brave. And that is actually something that I repeat to myself: be brave, be brave, be brave, when I'm in a tough time. But it's also when young ones say to me, well, what do you need? What qualities do you need to be a good journalist? And I'll say, well, you need to report without fear or favour, and you need to be brave. And I especially think that's true of Pacific journalists, especially journalists working in the region. There's tough times, and I get to walk away from situations they don't.
Right.
And so really they're the people who I admire the most.
Obviously, all your stories, we get the sense of your courage in them, but is there a particular story that still lingers in your mind?
I think, for me, children and the abuse of children, when children are hurt or dying, that's my Achilles heel. That is the thing that really upsets me, and it holds on, it grips my heart. And so when I come back from doing stories like that, I'm particularly traumatised from that. And so, yes, and probably the measles epidemic, when I saw dead and dying children, and just dealing over the years with, just recently when I was in Samoa looking at the meth trafficking and exposing that, and came across how some parents are dropping their children off to swapping their children for meth, and their children are being abused. And I got some level of detail which is absolutely not in the book, and I will never share that with anyone except the person I saw professionally when I came back, because it's just so awful. And for me, that is far worse than anything that I go through myself. And it's something I continually struggle with.
Right. What are 3 tips then would you give to up-and-coming journalists or storytellers, especially when it comes to reporting on traumatic events?
I think the first thing is have a support team around you. So whether it's at work or people who you really trust. So I have 4 people actually. One of them works at Radio New Zealand, who I go to for advice, and I go to them because I trust them, and I know they always have my best interests at heart. And they're people, so that really helps. That would be the first tip. Make sure you have good people around you. Second is, do not ever read the comments on social media. That's where good people, that's where bad people write. It's a terrible thing. And the third thing is, when people say to you as a Pacific journalist, you're not being culturally aware. We know what's culturally aware. We do. And quite often people in power use it as a means of stopping you reporting. So you have to be really aware of the boundaries on that. And so those would be the 3 tips that I would give. And
finally, Barbara, is this book the signal of you closing a particular chapter in your life? What's next for you?
Well, not yet. Not that I know of, but, we're in an industry that's really changing rapidly and evolving rapidly, which is really exciting. We're going into the digi age, but also we're going into, I just think that journalism becomes a lot more important. So I think, it was just another, I always think of my career as a lot of, you're building a house, and every building block that you put in is a good foundation. So this is another foundation, building block in my foundation.
Awesome. Naka, Barbara.
Thanks for having me.